while everybody else was mowing down on junk. And I was confused. How do I eat healthy? And all around me, everybody was unhealthy. And I wanted so hard to be healthy and strong. And
Misha, how did you find carnivore?
so I've known about carnivore for at least 7 or 8 years, but I'm just now getting into it, and that is for health reasons. I am a survivor of colon cancer. So on May 3rd of 2020, I was diagnosed with colon cancer, and I went through chemo and radiation, 2 operations and a procedure. So that's why I'm deciding to go down the carnivore route. But I've always been interested in it.
You've known about it for 7 or 8 years. So how did you initially hear about it?
On the internet, so I don't have a television, and I'm on YouTube all the time because YouTube is free education. All the things that I want to know about and learn about are at my fingertips on YouTube. So I'm always educating myself.
Could you talk a little bit about what happened with the colon cancer, the diagnosis, and what's happened since?
So at the very beginning of the world having COVID, I was at home doing what I do, and I got really sick with violent, urgent diarrhea. One day, my husband said to me, "Hey, honey, let's go for a bike ride." And I said, "I can't do that." He goes, "What do you mean you can't do that?" I said, "I have to run to the bathroom a lot." So for 7 weeks, I was at home with very, very, very violent diarrhea. And I ended up going to the hospital. And during those 7 weeks, everything on the internet, everything on the radio said, do not leave your house, do not go to the doctors, do not go to the hospital. So I stayed put, and I suffered for longer than I needed to because of COVID. So then I was in the hospital, and 2 young doctors read my scan and said, "You have a tumor in your colon area." And then I was sent to a cancer center close to the hospital and started treatment there. Now, I am a hippie since childhood. I'm 64 years old, and I'm also a trained herbalist. I went to school in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and also in Montpelier, Vermont. And I've been dabbling in herbs since the 1970s. So I wasn't on board for chemo and radiation, but this was so serious and such a big thing that I decided to go down the mainstream medicine route temporarily. So I'm still here, but I'm here because of me and not because of mainstream medicine.
And well, I'm glad you got through that. Is everything clear now?
No, I still have cancer. So when they remove a tumor out of you, cells can escape. And so I have colon cancer cells living in my lungs now. I have 3 lesions in my lungs. And my doctor last year, exactly a year ago, said, "You're going to have to stay on chemo for the rest of your life." And I said, "No deal." I said, "You're not offering me quality of life, and I demand quality of life." So I am very rebellious and stubborn. I'm very bullheaded. So I said no.
Yeah, I can imagine that wouldn't be. I've never experienced anything like chemo before, but I would imagine the quality of life, if you had to continually do that, it just go down the
It
plug hole.
doesn't
Yeah.
heal people. So it does kill cells. It does sort of work in a way. It can be helpful, but it does not heal a person. And everybody knows, even doctors, that all people, no matter what kind of cancer they have, it's all from inflammation. Everybody is inflamed on the whole planet. And everybody with cancer is inflamed. Everyone. But the doctors don't seem to understand certain things. They are so trained in a certain way of thinking and a certain way of doing, and they don't dare color outside the box because they would lose their job. So they
Yeah.
support me in doing alternative, and I'm a little shocking to people. I am not scared of death, and I am not scared of cancer. So they don't know what to do with me because I'm so I don't know, powerful or self-confident, and I believe in the healing nature of the human body.
So on that point, when did you start carnivore and how has it been going?
So I started carnivore a couple of months ago. Before I got cancer, so about 7 or 8 years ago, I went on the paleo diet because I knew there was something wrong with me. So I went to a clinic only run by women. It was close to the house, about 15 minutes away, and they put me on a paleo diet. And in 1 week of doing paleo, I looked like a different person. When I went to the doctors the next week, she looked at me and went, "Wow." So I went from paleo into a stricter thing like a Whole30 diet, and then I have done keto, but I do keto without dairy. And all of these alternative diets I think are good for people. And so, like everybody else, we progress from one diet to the next. And I don't do dieting for weight loss, I do it for health. When you heal your body, you drop the weight, and your body is full of inflammation. That's why people are overweight, because they're so full of inflammation. So
So
I started carnivore a couple of months ago, but I am slowly transitioning into carnivore. I just gave up olive oil and avocado oil. I This morning I cooked 3 meat patties and I cooked them in water and no oil at all. I do have animal fats in the house, but now I'm just going to start cooking with water and be fine with that.
is there a reason you're avoiding cooking with the oils?
Yeah, so I have been on a high fat diet probably for 7 years because that's what everybody recommends, but it does not help my digestion at all. I'm not against fats. I love butter. I wish I could eat sticks of butter like other people do. I cannot do it. So olive oil and avocado oil were harming, and I had no idea. I go to a lot of alternative clinics, and I met a woman who's about 10 years younger than me, a practitioner, and she said, stop eating olive oil and stop eating avocado oil. And the day that I did, everything changed. And that was just last week. So every week I release another thing that I've been eating, and I'm just getting down to the bare bones. And it works.
Yeah. So I realize you're still kind of transitioning through, but have you noticed any changes in the 2 months where you've been moving closer and closer to
It's
carnivore?
the same kind of changes that I had when I was on paleo, especially when I did the Whole30 diet. My brain and the way that I think and perceive the world is so sharp. I feel like a tiger. So when you're doing the paleo diet, the Whole30, they have a thing they call tiger blood, and that happens at about the third or fourth week, usually the fourth week. And that happened to me. I was driving in my car one evening going to a friend's house. I was stopped at a stoplight, and I looked out the window of the car, and everything was sharp. Sharp, like I couldn't believe. My eyesight and my brain were so switched on. And now that's starting to occur again. I feel like a tiger.
Mm. That's great. And how have people around you reacted to the way you're eating?
So I'm married. I have a husband, and he supports me a lot. Other people do not understand. I'm trying to get my adult children to do carnivore, and everybody just thinks it's absolutely crazy. I don't think it's crazy. It's the proper human diet. That's a true thing. So I get support mostly from the internet. So it's hard for me to go socialize with people. I go to these hippie potlucks with everybody, a vegan and a vegetarian, and I look down and go, well, I'm not eating tonight. So that can be very difficult. It's very hard to be social when you're living in the sea of vegetarians and vegans. It's very difficult. Sometimes I just kind of sit in the corner and they say, have you eaten? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. And I just have to fake it.
Wow. And so how are you eating now? Are you eating like one time a day, two times a day?
So I eat as much as I want. I don't eat in the evening. So I wake up, this is just how I am. I wake up between 4:30 and 6:30 in the morning. That's just how I'm built. I have farmer genes for thousands of years. So I wake up and have tea. I'm still drinking tea. I quit coffee, and then I don't eat until about 8 or 9, and then I I quit eating in the afternoon. So somewhere between 4:30 in the evening to 6:30, there's no more food after that. So every day I'm fasting for about 14 hours.
And how do you feel after 14 hours of fasting? Like, do you wake up ravenously hungry, or
I
do you
used to
feel
be
kind of
like that. So when I was younger, because I'm a morning person and a very active person. So at night, now I'm hungry. If like at 10 o'clock at night, I roll over and I'm starving at night and I force myself not to eat, do not get up. And my husband is on board. He's doing the same thing. And then by 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm not really hungry anymore. That's funny how we chemically change in the morning, that we're starving at midnight and then at 5 in the morning we don't want food anymore. It's just the way that we're built.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, you know, you kind of raised whenever you feel hungry, you've got to do something about it, right? But if you just push through it a little bit, it your body goes, "Okay, well, I'll take care of something else, or I'll satiate myself some other way," or whatever it is, you know?
We're not really built to eat at night. I mean, our modern society, there's a refrigerator and we're just like always have access to food 24/7, and we are not built to eat that way. We are not supposed to be snacking at midnight. We're not built for that. So it's hard to break that habit. Not that I was a snacker at midnight, but I just have enough self-control that I'm not gonna run down the hallway and grab something at midnight. I know better.
Wow. So, how was your eating in the past? Like, if you go back to, your childhood, or, early adulthood, how were you eating then?
So I'm going to tell a story. So my ill health started when I was 6 months old. I grew up in Massachusetts in the Boston area. My family is from Lithuania. I'm native Baltic from the Baltic Sea, and my mother and my grandmother came to the United States in 1955. I was born in 59. My mother was very stressed out. My family had lived through Nazi Germany. They moved there in 1940. So both my grandmother and my mother were very kind of stressed out from living with bombs literally dropping on their heads. So when I was 6 months old, my mother lost her breast milk and I became constipated. My mother told me this story, and my mother and my grandmother didn't know what to do. So they started giving me enemas. A baby should not have an enema. And they did it out of love and concern, and they wanted to have the little girl doing well. So when you give somebody an enema, what happens is all that water washes out vitamin K out of your intestines. Vitamin K is made in your intestines. So that's what happened to me. So my ill health started at 6 months old. And I only know that story because my mom told me. And so we'll go fast forward. I was a child in the 1960s, and I remember going to the first Burger King fast food restaurant in the 1960s in my area, and everybody was excited and everybody thought it was really cool. And I was just dumbfounded. I didn't really know what was going on. I went along with it, and I was just kind of looking around like, what is this? I ate the food, but I didn't enjoy the food. And I noticed in childhood that my family had stopped eating a lot of traditional food. So my grandmother, my mother made handmade food, like the old country, and we ate real food. And then slowly, slowly over time, my mother started shopping differently and buying different foods, and we all got sicker and sicker and sicker over time. And then fast forward again to 1973. In 1973, I was 14 years old, and I would be like hanging around with my friends, and we would go late at night to after smoking cannabis, and we'd be really hungry and have the munchies. And we would go to like a 7-Eleven. And I was a child, I was 14, but I was very sharp. And I would look around and look at the store and everything in it. I'm like, I can't eat anything in here. This is all garbage. So I would get like a little carton of milk and a little yogurt while everybody else was mowing down on junk. And I was confused. How do I eat healthy? And all around me, everybody was unhealthy. And I wanted so hard to be healthy and strong. And so I put myself on what I call the happy, hippie, healthy diet, which is like beans and rice. I was never vegetarian, but trying to eat what the hippies ate, the people that were older with me. What were they eating? They were eating salads, they were eating lentils and all this like hippie food. So I started doing that. And in the 70s, where I grew up in Massachusetts, there were hundreds of health food stores everywhere. They were a big new thing. And so I would shop at the health food store. And then I fast forward a little more to 1977. I was 18 and I had my first child, and I started getting really sick. And I've heard on your show other people that are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s currently all say the same thing. Something happened in 73, and again, something happened in 1977. Food went downhill in 1977. It plummeted into hell. And then we go into the 1980s where everybody's microwaving and everything's a microwave dinner. And then food went down again. So I have all these markers in my own life that correlate with other people and what they've been going through. So I've always been eating what I call the healthy hippie diet, and I regret it. I really regret it. I never stopped eating meat, but I wish I didn't do a lot of things that I did. I was misinformed and misled, and I have a lot of anger about it.
Well, so but that whole time you were still eating meat, right? So you
I've
never
been
had
eating
this.
meat since I was born. So for
Mm.
my people, being Lithuanian, being from the Baltic Sea, our native food is smoked herring and smoked eel and mushrooms. That's really what I should be eating. I don't have access to those foods. I live in New Mexico. It's a completely different culture. So so I've been eating meat my whole life. And meat makes me feel really good. It has always made me feel really good.
Looking at how you grew up, like thinking about going into, the Burger Kings, and then, in the 70s, things were getting even worse with food, and like microwaves are coming in and stuff like that. Um, where do you see this going from here, generally speaking? Do you think this is going to get even worse, or do you think there's going to be a correction at some point and people are going to start saying, we can't keep going down this path?
I don't think that the food industry is going to change. The food industry does what it does. And there were two things that I wrote in my notes here. And these are two things that I refuse to say in 2024. First, plants are trying to kill you. I am not going to say that. I am a gardener and herbalist. Plants are not trying to kill us. A daisy has never jumped out of my garden and bit me in the bum. That has never happened, not once, not ever. And the other thing I'm going to say is you or I have food addiction. Nobody has food addiction. Nobody is addicted to eating carrots and squash. We are addicted to eating junk food like chips and all kinds of stuff. So um, the food industry is just getting weirder and weirder, especially in the vegan world with the fake meat and the fake cheese and the fake everything. So this is a theory that I have. I feel that people who are on the carnivore path or the keto path, who are meat based, are going to flourish. And people who are going down the vegan path because they think it's for their good health are going to die off. I hate to be like that, and I hate to say that, but I am coming from my own experience. This isn't a theory that I just have in my head. It's my story and the story of thousands of people that I have met and talked to and observed. I am a keen observer and I take notes in my head all the time. I remember events that happened with people, food related, from like 30 and 40 years ago. And I could write a book about this. And people say, you should write a book. Well, I'm busy gardening, so I run a business. People actually pay me to come sleep in my garden. It's so beautiful. I do not grow vegetables, but that's what I do for a living. People come and sleep in my garden.
Um, uh, and like, what is that for? Why they want to
So
sleep in
people
your garden?
travel all over the world, and I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and there are two major highways that go across the United States, and I'm right at that intersection. And so people come. to my area to go hiking or stop overnight going to the Grand Canyon or somewhere else. And so we're like a way station. So people come and stay here. It's not a bed and breakfast. It's a garden that has camping in it. So people camp in my garden.
Oh, I see. So like people aren't just lying down in the grass and going
They
to
could
sleep.
if they wanted to, but we don't have grass.
Okay. Wow. Um, so I think what you talk about regarding eating junk is really important. You know, and people who don't eat that kind of stuff are going to be the ones flourishing because
Yes.
you know, more and more, I feel like when I interact with younger generations who are more likely to be eating very, very super processed food, I feel like their style of thinking is a little bit different. Um, and that could be generational, but I think a lot of it also has to do with the kind of food that they're pumping into their bodies.
It's true. And also, like when you're 15 to 25 years old, you feel like you're not going to perish, that you're going to live forever, and you don't think about health very much. Let me give you an example of a story. This is a story from 37 years ago when I lived in New Hampshire. So that's in New England. And I met a couple who had a little girl, and then they had a second baby who was also a girl. The parents were macrobiotics, so they were strict vegan. This is like almost 40 years ago. Their first baby was fine, but their second baby at 2 years old could not walk. This child was so weak it could not even walk. I can't even imagine. I've had 5 babies. I can't imagine having a baby that was so weak at 2 years old it couldn't walk. So they took it to the doctors and they found out that the child was so depleted because of the mother's diet that they started giving the baby injections of all the B vitamins. And eventually the baby got better. And the doctor said to mom, you have to start eating at least fish and you have to start giving it to your children. And I've heard the story from other people and I've seen it. I took a friend to the doctors about 8 years ago. She lived in Vermont. Her and her children also were vegan or are vegan. And those children weren't doing well 8 years ago. All kinds of mental health problems, all kinds of physical problems. The mother was not well on every way, and they refused to eat meat. And I took her to the doctors, and the doctor said to her, you have got to start eating something made out of flesh. And she's so bullheaded, she wouldn't do it. She knew that she should, but she couldn't do it. So this is an issue. This is not like me spouting out some kind of BS. This is science. And doctors, even alternative doctors, beg with their patients, would you just eat a tuna sandwich, please, just to get going? But we're so brainwashed that meat and fish and flesh is bad. And I have a lot of theories why people do that. There's a lot of shame in people. And so a lot of people have a lot of shame around abuse, a lot of different kinds of abuse. And so when they go vegan, in their mind, they think that they're being pure. People want to feel pure. They don't want to feel dirty. They want to feel pure and healthy. And so the promise of veganism helps a lot of people, not physically, but mentally. They think that somehow they're going to get better. I think there's a connection between people who have been abused, severely abused, and veganism. I see it all the time.
That's interesting. So for someone watching they haven't quite started carnivore yet, but they're thinking about it, how would you recommend they get started?
So each person is different. The recommendations I have is if you're a person that can just go cold turkey, then give away everything in your kitchen. This is what I tell people. Go into your kitchen and clean the whole thing. Take everything out of the cabinets, everything out of the pantry, everything out of the refrigerator. Either recycle it, compost it, give it away, throw it away, scrub everything and start fresh. And some people can go cold turkey and other people can't. So each person has to decide for themselves, am I going to start tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, or am I going to start doing pure carnivore in a month and I slowly wean myself off of a lot of things? Each individual must make that choice for themselves. But your kitchen is a celebration in the heart of your home, even if you live in an apartment in the middle of the city. And your kitchen should be like a temple. You should care for it and make it like the heart of how you live. So that's what I recommend to people. Go clean your kitchen and give everything away or chuck it in the trash, however you want to do it.
So, Misha, if people want to contact you or they want to come and sleep in your garden,
They
how
can.
how can they reach out to you?
So I have a lot of email addresses, and one email is bigfiregoddess@yahoo.com. That's my personal email. I have a business email, but you can contact me at bigfiregoddess.com.
Awesome. Well, I'll put that email address in the description. And Misha, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
I really love your show. I just admire you so much, and I'm so proud of you going carnivore and then having enough guts to have a YouTube channel. I would love to have a YouTube channel, but I don't really know how to do that. I have to figure it out. And this community just means everything to me. Thank you so much for having me.